Hi, welcome to my practice today. One thing before we start, I have my window open, so there'll probably be bird sounds and things now and then, but let's get started. You will see a full equipment list of things that I use or suggest that you might need on the screen now. So if you haven't got any of those to hand and you have access to them, go and get what you can now. Otherwise, work with what you've got and I'll try and show you alternatives as we go along. We're going to begin today in downward facing hero pose, ADHO, MUKHA, VIRASANA. I'm going to show you facing you first of all, and then I'll show you sideways as well. So you kneel with your big toes together and your knees about as wide as the mat, the outer knees about as wide as the mat. Ribs need to come into contact with the inner thighs, but it's not knees together because you need a space here for your abdomen to rest down. Bring your fingertips to the floor by your knees. I skipped forward then. And draw your tailbone down towards your heels. So from the front, what you might see is I move my navel back towards the spine, lift the front of the pelvis up slightly. Not so much that you collapse the chest keeps coming forwards, the tailbone goes down towards the heels. And that's the same action through the whole of the pose. Bring your hands a little bit further forward, still on fingertips. Fingertips because that helps you lift away from the floor rather than sink to the floor. Tailbone towards the heels or even towards your big toe. Extend the chest forwards. If you're stiff in the back, you might already be feeling this. Make sure the shoulders are just down in their neutral position, so not creeping up towards the ears. And then go forwards again on fingertips if you can. Straight arms the whole time. Tailbone towards those big toes, still lifting the chest forwards, separating and broadening the shoulders, not just away from the ears, but even away from each other, so the collarbones become broad. And then as far forwards as you can reach, whilst keeping your tailbone down on your heels, or your bottom down on your heels. If you're not able to do that, then you can have a block or a cushion, so that you have your bottom in contact with something, and that needs to go in. As soon as any lift comes between, any space between the feet and the bottom, place some support in there if it's a space that you can't work and actively get rid of. I'm keeping my head off the floor for now, just to keep it neutral in my spine and to keep this a really active pose. So my arms are working hard, they're separating the shoulders that way, but my outer arms are gripping in that way. So there's an opposite action of shoulders outwards, but outer arms in. Now we're going to go to flat hands, and I can release my forehead to the floor, but keep the shoulders separating away from my neck and from my ears. If that's really difficult, take your hands a little bit wider, or if you're sensitive in the neck area, you find shoulders and neck a difficult area to work, then maybe move the hands a little wider. Now we're going to come up and we're going to go through all those steps again a little bit faster this time. Coming up on fingertips, still strong straight arms, fingertips all the way to your knees, tailbone down, chest up. And then we're going to do downward facing dog, which again I'll do facing towards you. So we're going to go through these two poses twice, and I'll do them in the two different orientations. So begin with your hands down, fingers spread, hands at least shoulder distance apart, knees at least hip distance apart, and not underneath your hips, a little bit further back than that. Tuck the toes under, lift your knees off the floor, keep the knees bent as you roll the shoulders out. So that arm action that we had in the last pose of gripping the outer arms in, but separating the shoulders away from each other is really important here. Strong arm work to lift up away from the floor. Keep the ears between the upper arms if you can. The head's quite neutral. Tailbone still tucks down as if it could reach the heels, and then straighten out the legs. So the back and the arms and the hands are more or less identical in this pose to ADHO, MUKHA, VIRASANA that we did a moment ago. Now you can lift your chest towards the space between your hands You can draw your tailbone down towards your heels, and all of that is so that we bring flatness to the back rather than hunching. Or if you're very flexible, what I won't show because I wouldn't want to hurt my back, but we don't want to push the tummy down to the floor, which would create overarching and sinking and closing up here. Then come back down to your knees and sit back down. So that would be too much work in the lumbar, sagging feeling, pressing down in the lower back area. We always lift the navel back to the spine to avoid that. Now going to Adho Mukha Virasana again. So sit onto your heels. This time we'll go straight back, still active, so bottom and heels connected. If that connection isn't possible for you, place a cushion or a flat block there. Active arms, shoulders out, outer arms in, sinking down into that stretch and that fold, bringing my forehead to the floor. If I have to poke my chin down or tuck my chin up like this, and you can hear how my throat's been closed, if that's the only way I can get my head to the floor, then I would also put a block or a cushion under there, ideally a block or a hard surface. So active arm work, not the passive version of downward facing hero pose, but the active versions, particularly active in the arms. And then we're going to come up from here to all fours and then into downward facing dog. So all fours, wide stance, wider between your hands and your knees than between your shoulders and your hips. Tuck the toes under, lift up and stretch back. Straighten the legs out, draw the navel and the front ribs towards the spine. Lift and lengthen the spine. Elongate the soles of the feet to descend the heels, but the lift is upwards through the legs. Nothing about the legs is sinking down. The extension is all upwards. And then rest down to all fours. Now if you can bring your hands to your knees. You can go back onto the flats of your feet. You'll need to move your hands just a little bit closer and come to half Uttanasana. So let me just show you that action again, because you may or may not be familiar with it. It's just a way to transition between, not a formal transition, but going from here, hands come back by your knees, go back onto the flats of your feet, at the same time straightening out the legs. So your head stays fairly low, but you end up in half Uttanasana or half forward bend. Straight arms, straight legs, straight back. If you're not able to get all three of those areas straight, then you would have your hands on bricks perhaps, or even on a chair seat, on some support. Lifting up through the legs now, extending the front body forwards. So the arms don't really have to take any weight here, but we're going to ask them to work anyway. We're going to separate the shoulders out, identical to what we've already done. We're going to grip the outer arms in, and we're going to extend the sternum bone as if it could reach the short edge of the mat that's a long way away. And now we've been head down for a little while, so when we come to standing, we're going to breathe in and come to standing as we breathe out. And that way you avoid too much lightheadedness as you move through those two shapes. So this time we're going to do PRASARITA PADOTTANASANA, which is a wide-legged pose. So take your feet wide. If you anticipate you won't reach the floor, and have chair or bricks. Feet point forwards, and we're going to fold at the hips here. So as if you are in a playground, there's a bar here, and you're folding over the bar. So lifting all the way up the fronts of the legs, folding over the bar, and then bring the hands down underneath the shoulders. Lift the toes for a moment to really emphasize the lift of the front of the legs, and the inside of the legs, and the outside of the legs, and the lift of the back of the legs. Move the shoulders away from your ears extend the crown of your head, the top of your head forwards. So in my place, it's towards the camera. This pose is all about lift of the legs. It's extension too, but the legs need to lift. Now we're going to edge the feet a little closer to each other, and then we're going to breathe in and breathe out to stand up again. Now I'm going to turn the other way around, and if you do have either a yoga brick or a yoga block that you're not already using for your hands, then you want to take one now. A book won't really work for this because you'll see why, but it's going to be too unwieldy because a book can open. So you need something that's lightweight and that is static. If you can think of something, by all means, do an alternative, but just have a look at what we're going to do here. So in terms of the pose, it's the same pose. So we're going to take the feet wide, and then we're going to place the block between our forearms. Okay, so I have braced that on my tummy, and now I'm holding the block like so. You don't need to turn to the side like I did. I'm just doing that so you can see. So the most important place is that I'm holding it between my elbows. My hands are still fairly free. And I'm going to come down, and I'm going to see, with the lift of my legs still going like last time, lifting up through the legs, can I bend my elbows backwards and keep that block gripped between my forearms. So lifting up through the legs, extending forwards in the chest so we're not hunching and rounding to come in. Keep the shoulders away from the ears. Take the hands back and see if you can have them in line with the feet. Still keeping a grip on the block. Use that grip on the block, which is moving in towards the block, to separate your shoulders away from each other and away from your ears. Lift them away from your ears. Now move the hands back. You can let the block go now. Come onto your fingertips, and then bring your feet together. Breathe in and breathe out to come up. So let's just take whatever you were using there. Now if you don't have a prop, you can still do this, but you're going to have to imagine a prop. And what it is doing, the block is wider than the brick, so we've begun with the block. What it's doing is keeping your elbows together as you bend them. So there, you can't see my face, there's the action. And as you lift up and back, it gets harder and harder to keep the elbows in, because what they'd like to do is splay out. I did that on purpose to show you, but you may feel the way that the block gets harder and harder to grip. So as you bend your elbows to a right angle and lift up and back, again I'll go sideways, it gets harder and harder to keep the shoulders down and the elbows in. So that's what we're trying to do. So if you have a yoga brick, we're now going to try that with a yoga brick. If you're using your improvised prop, then that is what we're trying to do with it. And we're going to have one more go, straightening up my mat. But this time, if you've got a yoga brick, if you're really struggling, stay with the block, but if you have a brick, then you're going to use that. The bricks are narrower than the blocks. You don't want to take your elbows any narrower than your shoulders. They just want to stay parallel. So if you can see there, we're lifting up, but we have to have the hands facing forwards because they're going to be on the floor. So this time I will face this way. I'm going to get a good position of the brick between my elbows this time because it's a smaller item. So isolate it in between your elbows. Come down, hands to the floor. Now don't neglect the part where you lift the legs or where you lift your chest forwards. So keep a grip of the brick but lift up. And this is why it's important to have a lightweight prop, because you may drop it, and if you drop a lightweight item onto your fingers, it's not going to hurt. Something heavier will hurt. So I have brought my hands to be flat on the floor. I'm lifting my legs, I'm flattening my back, I'm lifting my chest forwards. Even as I fold, I'm now going to move my hands together, bringing the hands in line with the feet, trying to come to a right angle bend of the elbows, lifting the shoulders away from the floor, and the crown of the head comes towards the floor. Maybe it will reach the floor, but don't just try and push the head down. That is not the prize. The prize is extension, not pushing to get some eventual shape. Breathe steadily. Let your awareness explore the pose. Let your awareness help you extend and control the pose. Focus your mind to explore what's going on. You can come up out of these poses at any time. But if you can stay, keep your breath steady. Notice your neck. It should feel long. Now we're going to let the brick go so that we can come up and just focus on what we're doing as we come up without having to control the prop. So come to the halfway position, edge the feet to each other quite close, and then we're going to breathe in and we're going to come up. Now we're going to do some seated poses. Now whenever you sit down, it's a good opportunity to just make sure you've got your equipment near you, so that if it turns out you need to use something, you have something to hand. The first thing I'm going to use is a folded yoga blanket. Fold it neatly and put your neatest edge to the front, and then we're going to sit onto that. If you don't have a blanket to hand and you have a yoga block, then you can sit on 1 or 2 yoga blocks. If you sit on the yoga blocks, because they are less soft, then you don't want to have it that way around, you want to have it that way around, so that this corner here is visible at the center line of your body, and your legs can go here and here, and that way if you sit on it this way, these 2 corners will dig into the back of your thighs, and you don't want that, because we're going to take our feet wide. So UPAVISTA KONASANA, place the hands beside you. If you do roll to the front of your blanket, don't let your abdomen roll forwards. So gather the front of your abdomen back, draw the tailbone down, lift up, place the center of each heel on the floor. So not rolling to the side, but toes pointing up. Lift up through the spine, through the front body, broad out to the collarbones, relaxed in the shoulders. If you have a slight pressure forwards with the hands, so they're not literally going to move forwards, but a slight pressure forwards will help you to get an opening feeling in the top side chest here. So get that opening feeling in the top side chest, keep the navel back, and then take your hands off the floor and take them out to the side, shoulders down. Reach out into each finger. So we're just working on sitting tall and spreading our awareness. So feel each little finger, each ring finger, each middle finger, each index finger, each thumb. Notice your legs. See that you still have awareness in your legs. Notice your tailbone. Notice up your spine. Take care that you haven't hunched the shoulders in concentration or stress. So length in the neck. Notice how you're holding your head. Try to find balance there, so maybe move the whole head ever so slightly backwards. Be level to the floor with the jaw. This is a long time sat like this. Feel free to release if you need to, or to take your hands back to the floor. If you can, turn the palms upside down, still extending out into each of those feet, all the way along the legs. Lift the inner arms up so that your palm is flat to the ceiling. Roll the thumbs back more, descend the shoulders, and now draw a wide arc with both arms. You're going to lose visibility of my fingers, but we're going to reach upwards as much as you can. Keep the chest open. That is your touchstone. If your chest starts to go backwards, then your arms have come too close together for what your body can do right now. So keep them a bit broader. Keep turning the little fingers back. If you're not sure whether your arms are under control or even, have a look upwards. Maybe one day take the opportunity to have a look and do this in the mirror. And then bring your hands back down again. and release the arms. Allow the legs to relax. Bring the knees in for a moment. We're going to take the legs out, still sat onto the blanket. Sit more squarely onto the blanket now. You don't need to be to the front of it if you had gone to the front. Take a belt to your feet. Put the belt around the ball of the foot. Draw back. Spread the toes. Keep the heels on the floor. Lift up through the spine. Broad shoulders. Now, we don't want to wing the elbows out a long way, but have them a little bit broad just to encourage width here. So don't jam the elbows right into the side of the body, because that can make you narrow the front. Just slightly lifted in the elbows so that you feel broad across the collarbones. Keep the front bottom ribs in and back, lifting up with the chest, navel back. And now we're going to let go of the belt. Take the arms out to the side again, turn them upside down, a little bit faster this time. Reach up with the arms, keep the tailbone in, keep the chest lifted, keep the shoulders relaxed, especially the back edge of the shoulders back here, behind there. Rotate the arms. Bring the arms back down again. Take hold of the belt. Now if you're struggling to keep the legs straight, you need to sit up on more height. If you haven't got enough height in the world to get your legs straight, then you can have them a little bit bent, but work to have your legs straight if at all possible. And I mean straight whilst also sitting up tall. So some of us can straighten the legs, but the back really fights back. It's not great for the back. So the back needs to lengthen and feel that it can lift. We're going to do some twists here. So we're going to hold the belt in just the right hand. You're going to put your left hand on the floor slightly behind you, and you're going to look forwards. So don't look in the direction you're turning. You're going to look forwards, but you're going to begin to turn your shoulders to the side. Bring a little bend to your front elbow so the inner elbow faces up towards the ceiling and the bony part of your elbow goes down towards the floor, because that helps your shoulder to turn. So I'm turning from the soft abdomen, the rib cage, the shoulders, but I'm not turning the head, not just because I'm looking to the camera, but because it helps me to stay centered in the center line of my body. If I turn, it's much more likely I will shift my weight to one side. So if I turn my head, it's much more likely that I will shift my weight to one side or the other. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Now you can turn the head at the last moment. Be watchful of where your weight goes. We don't need to strain or stress the neck here, but it can become part of the action. And then face the front. We need to swap hands. Keep your legs alert and extending. Place the right hand behind you now. Inner elbow to the ceiling. Bony part of your elbow down. Slight bend in that elbow. Relaxed in that shoulder. Widen the collarbones. Looking forwards again. So I'm extending out in my legs. I'm aware of where the weight is on both sides of my bottom, and I'm making sure it's even. And then I'm turning my soft abdomen, my ribs, my shoulders, my collarbone, and then eventually I can allow my head to go as well. And then face the front. Now we're going to take the legs out into that wide position again. UPAVISTA KONASANA, a wide angle pose. And this time, if you're able to sit on the floor, then you can sit on the floor to do this. So you can take support out from under you. And again, what tells you whether you can sit on the floor is, can you keep your legs straight whilst your back is lifted? Can you sit up straight without your hands on the floor? If you can, then you're sat on correct height. Now we're going to place the belt onto the right foot. And we're just going to leave it for a moment. We're going to establish a good, solid, symmetrical base. Centre of the heel on the floor, centre of the back of the legs on the floor, lifted. And then we're going to twist. So I'm going to reach across with my left hand to the belt on my right foot. I'm going to place my right hand slightly behind me, and I'm going to twist as before. I'm extending out with my left leg that I'm turning away from and making sure that's extending that way. Face the front, swap the belt over. So now I'm holding across my body with my right hand to my left leg. I'm extending out in both legs, turning my soft abdomen, my ribs, my collarbones. I'm bending the elbow in the way that I did last time. Inner elbow faces the ceiling, shoulders really wide. And I'm looking around this time, but I am making sure that my brain is looking at this cheeky right foot that I'm turning away from, so that that leg doesn't try to check out of the pose and not take part. And then face the front. Now, if that is as much stretch as your legs have got in them, then you repeat the same thing with the belt. However, if you can reach your foot, you're going to reach your foot. So it gets to be quite a stretch, and this time we're actually going to let this leg roll in slightly, and we're even going to slightly lift the weight to see if we can reach the foot. Now, if you can't reach the foot, what you can do is make yourself a small loop. So if you don't have a really good grip, you can make yourself a small loop. So I am heavier on my right sitting bone now than I am on my left. I'm still aware of what my left foot's doing. I've not checked it out, but I am actually letting the inner leg roll down a little. I'm putting my right hand on the floor beside me over here to help me stabilise, and then I'm turning around to the right. Now, in all these twists, you should always go with awareness and carefully. And if you find any unpleasant feelings, then you reverse until they go away. You can hold around the little toe side of your foot if you're able. So you can see that I have rotated my hand so it faces towards you, and I'm holding around the little toe side of my foot. Now that rolls my shoulder in, so I need to work to make sure it doesn't lift towards my ear. I'm very alert and straight in my right foot, but I'm allowing my left foot to come along a little. And then we're going to let go, and we're going to go to the other side. So come back to that symmetrical feeling. And then we're going to place whatever you used on the first side, use on the second, unless you're working with an injury and so one side needs to be less extended or has less ability than the other, then obviously you would adjust for that. But otherwise use the same on each side. So reach across, left foot, right hand. So I'm extending with my left leg, very alert, very straight, very extended. My right leg is alert, but it is allowed to come with me a little. So I am allowing the weight to shift. You can see the difference in my hip. Hip is back somewhat, and then hip is allowed to lift. I'm not lifting massively off the floor, but there is less weight there. There is less solid contact. And I am extending and I'm turning. So we're still not collapsing or crushing anything down. That's never part of yoga. There is no collapse pose. If you have a little more flexibility, turn that palm to face the centre, so facing the camera for me, and then hold on the little toe side of your foot. Control that shoulder away from your ear. Reach across. It's a strong side body stretch as well as the stretch in the legs. And then we're going to face the front. So now we're going to sit in BADDHA. So BADDHA is where you bring your feet together and your knees apart, and what you don't want is to have that much lift between the knees and the floor. So I'm going to sit on 1.5 blocks today. If you use a folded blanket, that allows you to have lots of adjustability depending on how many layers you fold. So we're going to bring the feet together. In the classical pose, your heels are right up against the block or right up against your perineum because you would be sat on the floor. But if you bring them all the way in and your hips aren't ready for that, then it will just pop your knees up higher. So you won't gain anything from that. So you can allow your heels to be a little bit further out, but just know that eventually, one day, the pose is that your heels are right in. As you saw there, I took some bricks because I'm sat up on height. My hands won't reach the floor easily. So now I'm going to use those bricks behind me pressing the soles of my feet together, extending the legs out, and now you can see this relatively evenness between hip and knee when I'm working. Drawing the shoulders down, making sure that my front ribs don't flare forwards, that my tailbone's still going down and into my body. Then I'm going to see, can I bring my hands forwards to my ankles, still open my chest and still get that extension sideways. So here, the hands forwards, I don't have as much help from my arms. Extend out from inner groin to inner knee, draw back from outer knee to back hip as it is here. And then release. So what we're going to try now is bringing those two poses together. So you can sit up on something if you need to, and there are a lot of different joints involved in this, so you may need to support yourself. You bring in, so we start in that right angled or wide angled pose. It's at least a right angle here. And you bring in your right leg. So if your knee or the whole of your outer calf will sit on the floor, then that's great. If this lifts at all, it won't go solidly down, then you need to have something underneath your knee. If you get pain in your knee and you have a yoga belt to hand, the first thing you can try is actually placing it around the shin and the thigh bone and trapping that leg closed. So that works with a yoga belt. I basically just trapped it closed, and that helps to stop any strain in the knee. Depends on where the strain's from, but it's one thing you could do. So stretch out with the straight leg, lift up. Now we're going to turn towards the bent leg first. This time we are extending through the straight leg the whole time. And then we're going to face the front, and then we're going to turn towards the straight leg. Then we're going to lift up the hand that's at the front. So my right leg is bent, so it is my right arm that I lift up. And now we're going to have a strong stretch up the side body, and we're trying to bring the side ribs round, leaving behind the outer hip that goes down and back, but bringing the side abdomen, the side ribs, the side chest around, and then leaning forwards and seeing if you can get the foot. In all honesty, if you couldn't get the foot before, it's going to be further away now, so it may not be possible. And if you're not using the yoga belt on your knee as I am, then you can use the belt to hold your foot. Try to have, whatever you're holding your foot with, a little bend in the elbow, because that makes a world of difference to the space and the comfort of your shoulder and your neck. Still extend upwards and then release. So we're going to take the knee out on that side. So this is a combination of three poses really: UPAVISTA KONASANA, BADDHA KONASANA, and a pose called JANU SHIRSHASANA. So bend up your left foot. So JANU SHIRSHASANA is not as wide angled as this, but it has the bent leg, straight leg approach to it. So it has heritage, if you like, this pose in all three of those. So we have one leg bent. Your knee may or may not need support on this side. I'm again going to use the belt. There are many different ways of supporting, and because I can't see you individually, and this is not a video about therapeutic ways of doing the pose, I can't show you everything, but that is the one I wanted to show you today. And in any bent knee position, except perhaps when you're kneeling with weight down on the knees in classical kneeling position, to hold the leg closed with a belt can take strain away from the knee. It's worth trying. Certainly don't do it if it increases pain, but it may well take some pain away. So we've sat in the centered position. Now we're going to turn towards the bent leg. Awareness and extension out into that straight leg, which is my right leg this time. Trying not to lean towards the bent leg. I was doing that a moment there. And then face the front and come back to face the straight leg. Now as we turn to each side, the aim is that the legs don't react, or at least they don't move. They might react and we may have to work with them differently, but we don't allow them to actually move as we turn, not as we did last time. Now we're going to lift up, this time with the left arm, draw the shoulder down, draw the ribs around, and we're going to reach out and see how close that foot is. Oh, it's further away on this side for me. I'm going to have a little bend in the elbow, extend up. Much more challenge for me on this side. And then we're going to release. I'm going to face to the front. And we're going to take the belt off the legs. Now we're going to take a blanket and we're going to come into a forward bend. Now if you struggle with forward bends, I recommend that you have a chair and you're going to fold your forearms, take your forearms onto the chair seat and rest your head like that. If your back feels strain, you can even have the knees bent, and in fact we're going to have the knees slightly bent. We're going to roll the blanket underneath the knees. You could use cushions if you don't have a yoga blanket, but we're going to put the blanket under the back of the knees like so, and then if you have a bolster, you can have a bolster to fold onto, or you can fold down onto your legs. You can do this with a belt around your feet as well. So you're going to lift up, you're going to come forwards, you're going to get your feet, and then you're going to see if you can fold down. And what you want to do is just have a little test and see, what do I need my head to go on? So this is a resting forward bend. So I'm going to bring a bolster, you could bring a blanket, and I'm going to place my forehead there. I'm going to make sure that what I'm using is not now interfering with the grip on my feet. I'm going to hold over the top of my feet. So before we get too settled, I just want you to check a few things. So you don't have to move and look up if you feel absolutely fine. But what I'm finding is I've rolled my blanket under the back of my knees is far too lumpy for me. My legs could straighten much more than that. So I'm going to turn sideways for those of you that are looking at the screen so you can see from a different angle. I think what I'm going to do is just have small amount of blanket. If you fold forwards easily, then you don't need to have any blanket there at all. If you fold forwards easily, the blanket is really just to allow you to extend, to have something underneath the back of the knees so that there is softness there. So here, there is a little rounding of the back. There is not pain or strain in the back though. There is broadness across the shoulders, so I'm going to just allow my elbows to come out a little bit so my shoulders feel wide, and that has an influence on how my neck and my head feel. There's awareness in my legs, so this is not 100% passive pose because I'm still pressing my legs down into that blanket to make sure that my legs extend, and that takes some strain out of my back. With all of these actions, you need to experiment and watch for yourself how your body acts and reacts to the things that you ask it to do. I have my forehead supported so that my neck can feel soft, and so that my brain and eyes can begin to soften. Now, for those of you who don't find bending forward at all restful, your body's not ready to find that restful yet, then you can come up out of this position and you can begin to prepare for Savasana. I'm going to show you a way to prepare with your legs on the chair. So I'm going to move out of this position, but if you enjoy forward bend, if that's really working for you today, then you could stay there, or you can stay there a few more moments and just listen to the instructions, and then you can follow them when you're ready to. So if you have a chair available, or a sofa edge is ideal, then take yourself to that. So here is my chair. I've got the edge square onto me, and because I happen to have a blanket available, I'm going to use that on the edge of the chair. This is a specific yoga chair, so it's got a very hard seat. Maybe you're using something that isn't quite as hard. Now, the nicest way to use a chair is to get the whole of the back of your calf supported there, and the chair right into the back of the knee. And then to ideally have, I'm not very long in the legs, but to have the seat of the chair long enough that the whole of your thigh bone feels like it's just dropping down, even that you're slightly hanging off the chair. Just tucking my tailbone under there. You can see I've laid back flat on the floor. If your head tips back like this, short back neck, over long exposed throat, you need to support your head onto something. So that something could be another blanket, or it could be a block or a cushion, or you may not have a head that tips back and you don't want to use any extra support. If you are using support, have it underneath the head and the neck. Now move away any equipment that you're not deliberately using, and then allow just one more adjustment. So have your fingertips pointing up to the ceiling, your triceps, the back of your upper arms against the floor, and press down there so you can roll and open your shoulders. Make sure that doesn't introduce an arch in your middle back, but you can see how it creates lift in the chest. My shoulder blades feel like they moved just slightly down the mat towards my tailbone, and then I'm going to turn my palms so they face towards my face-ish, and then take my hands out to the side. If your hands suspend, the quick way to do something about that is to rest them on your tummy. The more restful and the more long-term open way is to actually support your hands onto some blocks. So you might put a block under each hand. Basically have your hands resting, not suspended. And then close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. Let your body settle into the position that you've taken. Become aware of the way that the floor beneath you and the equipment that you're using is holding your weight, is supporting you. And with each breath, and particularly each out breath, let yourself feel the weight of your body surrender more and more heavily onto the supports that you've taken. Begin to narrow your focus onto your breath. Follow the path of each breath all the way through the in-breath and all the way through the out-breath. And notice the physical feelings and sensations that go along with each cycle of breath. Because each phase of breathing has a different nature. The breath in is lifting, brings in energy, brings opening, even if that's only passively and gently to the lungs and the ribs. And then each breath out has the opposite feeling of releasing, of the weight of the body slightly falling backwards. Aim to keep your attention focused on the breath, focused on the sensations of the breath, the lift of each time that you breathe in, and the descent and release and passive heaviness of each time that you breathe out. If you're lying with your legs on the chair, then the out-breath can also be felt in the descent of the legs, in the heaviness of the legs. The thigh bones release down into their hip sockets. The leg flesh releases away from the bones. The muscles that have been challenged in our physical practice have a chance to let go. You can also bring this sense of releasing back to the face. Let yourself feel the back of your head heavily contact against the floor or block or blanket or cushion. But then also let yourself notice the muscles of the face. And see if you can just get the sense of the layer of muscles just lying back, softening back against the structure of the skull. The skin draped across the muscles. And the face fully quiet, fully passive, resting back against the support of your body, and in turn the support of the floor. Take a moment to make sure you're not gripping or holding any tension in the jaw and the teeth and the tongue or around the eyes. The tongue rests in the base of the mouth. And maybe you can get a gentle sense of the eyes themselves resting back in their sockets. Gentle resting sensations through the whole body. Now, because you're practicing at home, you can choose to extend this phase of the practice as much as you like. But I'm going to bring my practice to an end now. So just bring your awareness, if you're finishing as well, a little bit more to the surface of your body, a little bit more into its everyday mode. Just notice your clothes. Be aware of the room around you, even though your eyes are still closed. And then when you're ready to make small movements, perhaps move your hands and then raise your hand to rest it on your tummy or on your ribs. Then perhaps move the feet. Then if you've used the chair, move your feet towards the edge of the chair so that your knees are drawn a little bit more towards your chest. And then you're going to turn onto your side, roll onto your side. Use one arm to cradle the head. At this point, it's a good idea to shade the eyes so that you can then prepare to open the eyes. And once your eyes are used to the light again, you can roll over almost all the way onto your front before pushing yourself up with your arms and gently coming to sitting, protecting your back. So thank you very much for practicing with me today. As you can see, I am not dressed the same as I was at the start of the practice. Due to a technical hitch, I had to re-record the meditation section. So here I am the day after, but we have got to the end of the practice anyway. I really appreciate you watching my videos, and I hope that you enjoy them and that you find value in them. If you would like to support my channel, then you can go to my Ko-fi page and donate just a few pounds, and that would be gratefully received. But you give me a great deal by simply watching and practicing along with me. So thank you very much for being there, and I will be back very soon with another class to share with you. Thank you very much.